you used a bit of this lockdown time to have a look at your CRP and its relation to your CIP. How do you structure it? What's the difference in the propositions, and what are clients getting from you nowadays?
Well, I've always segmented my client bank. Well, I say always, but from about 10 years ago, I segmented it. And that's because I no longer wanted to work with younger people who are in the accumulation phase. I really wanted to work with pensions planning, and I like that area. It suits me. So I had already segmented my client bank, and then when I moved my business 5 years ago, I decided that I would work purely with, no, not purely, but I would work with ladies. So I'd have a focus with ladies. So women who are coming up to retirement, managing their own money, and I would really work with that. And in St Albans, we've got a lot of ladies that fall into that category. A lot of them work in the city, so that was a big area for me. And I am getting a lot. That's where my business is. So when you're working with people who are retiring, because the DB schemes are not there, and we no longer use annuities so much, although I really do believe in them, and I have a lot of ladies that have annuities because women like to know they've got money at the end of the month to go out and buy a new handbag or whatever it is that they're buying. Women just tend to like the confidence of not running out of money. So having that initial that sort of bottom layer of fixed income is great. So what I've been able to do in the last couple of months is just to combine the centralised investment proposition so that it has a big focus on taking income from it, because an investment proposition tends to be the accumulation. And we really need to go into the retirement space. Is you have to accumulate in the retirement space because you need some money to grow, but you've also got money that you need now to last the net. But then you've got a couple. You need this other pot here that isn't going to fall apart in the next couple of years, but it's going to fund the next big set of income. So you really need three scenarios. There were three investment scenarios, and that's quite hard to build on a platform because platforms don't like you mixing model portfolios. So that's one of the first issues that I came across, but that's what I've been working on for the last 4 or 5 months.
Richard, I know you've got your finger on the pulse across the wider marketplace with a lot of the research you guys do. Are you seeing a lot of that kind of activity going on behind the scenes at advice firms at the moment?
Yeah, definitely. So I think, as just mentioned, the sort of within accumulation, there's that sort of heavy focus on risk profiling, and now we're really starting to see a rise in cash flow modelling for decumulation. So at the moment, it seems that cash flow modelling is really used to validate plans for decumulation, so testing portfolios against longevity assumptions, etc., and communicating that information to clients. We're also seeing sort of cash flow modelling really used as a bit more of a basis for sort of getting a handle on capacity for loss for clients as well. So a lot of advisors we're speaking to sort of, I want to say, struggling with capacity for loss in terms of how to sort of make it concrete and sort of explain it to clients in a sort of quite a robust way. So we're seeing a sort of rise in cash flow modelling for that. But not yet seen much in the way of sort of cash flow modelling being used actually in the sort of input stages of this is what the retirement portfolio should look like. So it still seems that portfolios are really heavily based on sort of multi-asset funds and asset allocation, really kind of replicating what's happening in accumulation. So we're not really seeing that sort of shift into new sort of types of portfolios yet.
Mine, from your view, how far have we moved from, here's your CIP for accumulation on one hand, how far have we actually got into that deep thinking about what constitutes a proper decumulation proposition?
I think that it's something that's becoming more and more topical as time goes on, really. If you look at, even if you look on the, what providers are doing, what advisors are doing in terms of the commentary around CRPs, it seems to be growing again, maybe in light of that Dear CEO letter, which talks about having retirement income process and what does that look like and so forth, kind of alludes to having a robust proposition in place. It's a bit of a reminder, I suppose. And I think that different people have different views on what a CRP is. So obviously we talk about the investment journey, what does the portfolio look like and so on. But I think that whilst that is a central part of the proposition, there is that bit around it, which I think Susie was talking about. How do you make sure there's a robust process which says, well, how do I overcome some of these new risks that are involved? So you've got your risks in accumulation, around attitude to risk, investment risk, and so forth. But then in decumulation, you've got that whole issue around, well, okay, if we've got volatility in there, then all of a sudden we've got sequencing risk on the other side of the journey, which can be an enemy rather than a friend in some circumstances. And clearly you've got things like longevity risk. So I think around that sort of investment proposition, there's also, annuities have been mentioned, and obviously there's lots of different ways of doing it, but putting in something specific which overcomes some of those other risks, capacity for loss we've talked about. How do you measure that why is it more important in decumulation? How do you measure it, and how do you evidence that you've measured it and then found a way of providing for it? And so I think there's more and more focus on that at the moment, but I think it's just more than just the investment proposition per se.
Yeah, Martin, that's very interesting you say that, because because I have worked with ladies, ladies tend to they're more cautious. So I have done a lot more annuities than most of my colleagues will have done. And in what we've had with the stock markets in the last 6 months, they haven't worried about it. They don't care because they're getting a regular income. And what I've been trying to do is really cover that basic income. Most people in St Albans, if they had £1,000 a month, state pension plus a bit of top up, £1,000 a month, they could do most things. They know that they're happy with that. Given that they're retired and they've probably got a bus pass and all the other things they've got, but they're probably happy with 1,000. Well, you can say that there's a 7,500, 8,500 from the state pension. I need to top up an annuity of maybe 4,000 or 5,000, and then they don't have to worry about regular income. That's the capacity for loss. That says that if I lost everything, I could still function. And I think we need to start seeing more opportunity for that annuity type, getting those smaller annuities because they will top up the state pension, and really that's something I would like the product providers to focus on. Yeah,
I mean, from our perspective, obviously this isn't a product session as such, but in terms of building something like that, which can be mixed with investments and run off a platform, that's kind of where we're going, or it is where we're going in terms of our propositions, so that you could do that and then say, right, okay, actually, by using cash flow alongside that and saying, well, I've got some other income coming in X number of years time, or actually, I've got a gap whereby I've not got my state pension coming in yet, but I might need something for a short period of time, and then I might want to change that later on, but still have the access to a guarantee and things like that. So that's kind of from a provider perspective, from a product perspective, that's the sort of thing that we're designing at the moment and are using with some advisors as well. So we're starting to see more interest in that kind of scenario.
And also what I've found as we're coming out of this furlough, we're coming out of it and people are going back to work, is that lots of my clients don't actually want to go back to work. They've said, I'm so stressed, I now see the children, I realise what I'm missing, I'm 60 years old, I don't want to wait till I'm 65, work out for me, can I retire? And they might be in a DB scheme and they probably don't get their state pension till 66 or 67. So we're looking to do something for the next 5 or 6 years until other monies come in. And that's been a very interesting conversation I've had with people about, can you tell me, can I retire now? Even if I have to take a bit of a hit on income, can I retire? Can I not go back to work?
Yeah.
That to me plays very nicely into the more progressive thinking that I'm seeing on the part of a lot of advisors at the moment, saying, yes, we've had these wonderful drawdown plans since the pension freedoms and people have got some excellent returns in some cases, but our value now is in that reassurance. What good are those returns that's going to last you another 2 years potentially if you live past 95, if you're going to be stressed, if you're not going to have the emotional value in the advice as well.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things is that, when you look at things like guaranteed income, what's the, if you like, the risk premium to say, well, okay, you're perhaps, you could take income flexibly, and that may well be part of the picture to take a flexible income. But what is the real value of having a guarantee? Is it actually more than the guarantee itself? Because you've got that peace of mind aspect and things like that. You've got that security element there as well. And we did some work with Rory Percival quite recently, and people can go onto our website and look at the content there in terms of the work we've done with him, and he makes that very point. And especially since there are so few schemes doing things like partial transfers now, where you can't just decide, well, I'll take some of my DB but I'll leave some of it in there. And a lot of people would really sort of agree with the fact that, yes, we'd like those to be available. Well, the fact is that in most cases they're not. No. So at the same time, that importance of having a guarantee and flexibility can still be built in without necessarily making that binary decision, and taking that sort of sensible approach which says, yes, this is going to cover my capacity for loss. This is going to make sure all the non-negotiable needs are going to be covered. And yet I've got that peace of mind and the flexibility with the rest of the fund. And I think that's maybe where we're looking at CRPs and where we can add in that flexibility.
Absolutely, because I'm also defined benefit pension transfer specialist, and I have done a number of pension transfers. And the one thing I can tell you about the pension transfer is I have changed the lives of the people I've done that for. Most of them have got a reason that they want to take their pension out. They want to retire early. They just want to leave work. Or they've got a family situation where maybe they've got they're not ill but their wife is ill. So there's all of these reasons, and I can't think of a time when I haven't been really happy about why I've transferred out of a DB scheme and I've changed people's lives. I got a phone call from Greece one time. Realised it was a European call, and they said, "Oh, I'm just phoning from the beach. We're having a glass of wine with my two daughters. I haven't done this for a long time. I just want to say thank you because you've changed my life." I just feel, that's where we're going. And there is a balance there between, yes, we've taken a transfer out of the DB scheme, exactly like you've just said, Justin. We do need to put back that basic level of protection, that capacity for loss. So there's not that there's ever no capacity for loss, but we've got some protection there. And that's why we still need to use annuities, although I don't actually ever use the word annuity now. I use the word guaranteed for life. I'm an advisor who was taught features and benefits. So you had to list features and benefits. So I one day working with a lady who was with a company who had actuaries, and she said, the actuaries have told me absolutely I must not have an annuity. They're bad. And I said, oh, because it was obvious she needed an annuity. So I gave her the benefits of an annuity on one side, and I gave her some features on the other. And I said, this is an annuity, and I called the other side guaranteed income for life. And I said, which would you like? And she said, oh, I want the guaranteed income for life.
Yeah.
Then when I said to her, actually, they're just the benefits of an annuity, she said, you could knock me down with a feather, but I'm going to have that, and I'm going to tell the actuaries they're wrong. And it's just sometimes it's how you sell it, isn't it? How it's described. So we do need to have this guaranteed income for life. I don't care how it comes, but we need this that is that bottom level, and then we put on all the other things on top that we can do with the investment funds, the model portfolios that are coming out. We've got more discretionary fund managers looking at producing income. FE Invest have just produced a set of income MPSs as well. So, we are going in that direction, but I think it's that annuity block at the bottom that holds it all up that we need to concentrate on.
I mean, obviously, there's a block in clients' minds in some cases with branding like Annuities. But Richard, are you seeing anything from either the platforms on the investment managers side, just little hurdles that advisors are also having to go through if they want to, match returns with a bit of guarantees and the things that could really improve their fortunes?
I mean, there's a few blockers almost to use of annuities, and obviously we've talked about the guaranteed products on platforms already, but being able to manage it within a proposition when advisors' propositions are so focused at the moment around model portfolios, etc., delivered on platform, so it's very difficult to include those sorts of products within the way that advisors are running business at the moment. They also don't play particularly well with the current setup for risk profiling systems as well, because it's not something that's based around asset allocation. It doesn't fit within asset allocation models. So it's one of those things where financial advisors' accumulation propositions have really gone down sort of one track. And it might not necessarily be the best option for decumulation, but it's quite hard to change entire models around that quickly. I mean, the other thing I would say, what is quite interesting is when we surveyed financial advisors around attitudes to decumulation and some of the risks that they also see to their own business, they're sort of picking out one of the biggest risks is clients overspending. So it's not just the sort of risk to the client. It's also financial advisors being quite aware that they're once they're in drawdown, for example, there is quite a big risk that the client gets awfully excited and does go on far too many holidays in the early years. So obviously there's sort of annuities, etc.
And that's where the cash flow really comes back in as well, doesn't it? About that longevity risk. But flipping right back to the beginning, where you said it was proposition followed by cash flow rather than cash flow driving proposition. Or how do we flip that picture on its head and make that a better outlook for the client?
I mean, it's a really interesting question as to how to do it. I think if you kind of look back a few years, you look at the rise that we've seen in recent years of that quite a formulaic, robust risk profiling exercise in accumulation that leads into a number of asset allocation models and centralized investment propositions being quite robust now. But it seems to me that we need something that's sort of equally robust for decumulation that deals with issues such as capacity for loss, longevity risk, sequence risk, etc. How we get to it is quite difficult, given that we are within that sort of accumulation mindset of asset allocation and model portfolios, etc. So yeah, I haven't got an answer as to how we're going to move there, but there's certainly a gap in the market at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, what we tried to do in the videos that we've got there through Money Marketing is looking at a 6-stage process to try and replicate something that was along similar lines in terms of having a model like you would for CIP, but then looking at things like, where do we start from in terms of, getting our advice principles in place and making sure they're consistent in the same way that you might have a model for CIPs, and then saying, well, okay, how do we take into account capacity for loss and the spending hierarchy that we've been talking about, whether that's be through, an annuity, and saying, well, actually different parts of this income need to maybe warrant different risks as well, depending on what they're there to pay for. How do we establish that? And then how do we produce that income in various ways that are available, whether it's through a probability type exercise, a natural income, or an annuity based proposition, or combination, that sort of thing. And then how do you stress test it using cash flow? And I think the thing is as well, if you look at things like prod, where it talks about that proposition should be individual to each client, I think it's good having a robust structure, but within that there needs to be that flexibility that says that's good, that's maybe a preferred way for some clients, but actually there are other clients where this methodology fits. And then we'd look at things like I think the big thing about this is evidencing it as well. We talked about the protection for the advisor firm and the risk that the advisor firm take on. Is how do you evidence each of those stages using things like withdrawal policy statements and things like that, and then looking at a robust review, so that it's a cyclical kind of evolving model as well. So that's what we've tried to do in those videos that we've done, to look at all those different aspects. But different firms, I'm sure, will take bits of that and ignore others and do something else in other bits. But I think when you look at what providers are doing, what we've done, what others are doing, I think there is more ideas sort of coming to the fore in terms of how that might actually be achieved in practice. I think
as an advisor as well, that this is a very complicated area for the decumulation, and you could get it terribly wrong, or you can get it really right. And if you get it really right, you've probably spent a lot of time doing it, and you spend consistently a lot of time doing it, because it's not just an annual review. You tend to touch these clients maybe 7 or 8 times a year, and the touch points, and maybe have a mid-term review as well. And that's one of the big reasons why I wanted to move away from a percentage to a flat fee, because okay, at the early stage they might be growing their portfolio, but then there's going to be a time when they start taking more out of it. And I wanted my business to benefit from all the work that I do for that, not on the value of the portfolio, but on the value of the work that I'm putting into to get them to that point.
And so that for those clients who you've mapped out that they can afford to spend more, they aren't unnecessarily tightening their back, as you said, that they can go on that beach holiday, and that's the value they get out of advice, is the happiness that they derive from that actual spending.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my clients are always doing things, and that's because they have a basic income that is guaranteed through this guaranteed income for life, and the way that I've structured it. So yes, we've taken a bit of a tumble in the last few months because of the market, but the client's not worried about that, because that's their future income that we're talking about, their immediate income for the next 2 years or so. We've sorted that out, but their basic income, their basic needs, this is not going on holiday, this is their basic needs. And you can do a lot in St Albans, you don't need to go on holiday. We've got lots of museums and things, but their basic needs are taken care of. Yeah. So, when somebody's comfortable, I have this expression when I'm talking to clients, is that worrying about money is stressful. So if I can take the worry out of just, nobody cares how much money they've got, they care about how much money they can spend. And if you give them enough to spend, then you're taking the stress out of their life. And that's my job, is to take the stress out. But I have to be mindful of how that portfolio develops. And that's where, Martin and Richard, what you're saying is how do we balance that between cash flows? And I don't think a lot of the cash flow models that we've got, that the software actually helps us really in this decumulation space. I think they're all very set on taking income from a set amount from one pot, and it doesn't work like that. So I think we've got a long way to go with cash flow modelling tools, and I think we need to do a little bit more about how we manage those decumulation portfolios.
That's a really nice note to end things on. I did say half an hour, and that has perfectly hit that on the nose. Thanks so much for coming on, guys. Really appreciate it. As ever, I will let you know when this is all up on the site, but it shouldn't take long. You all look fabulous as well, so there's going to be hopefully a video to go with it. Yeah, really appreciate it. I'll let you crack on with your days, because I know how busy everyone is.
Did we cover all your points?
Absolutely. I thought that was a pretty good synopsis of everything that was on my list. So
great.
So we've got lots more things to talk about, haven't we? We just lots more things that we, where we could take this. Just how we can progress and how we can get product providers to start giving us the things we need as advisors to manage that earlier. So if you think about it, in the last 10 years, maybe even the last 5 years, DB schemes they're not there. So so many people were no longer in DB schemes. The future advisor, I should be retiring in a few years' time, but the future advisor has got so many more money purchase schemes to look after than I ever had, and we need to address this. It's a really important point.
It does seem sort of slightly strange that the shift away from the sort of risk pooling that you get with annuities and DB, which should be fantastic, particularly for wealthier people who are the ones that see financial advisors. They're the ones that would tend to live longer and therefore should do statistically better out of some of the risk pooling. But so it's very strange. And then of course you've got all of the life insurance companies, called DB pension schemes, etc., thinking about liability-driven investing, how to kind of extend that into the advice market. But that without the risk pooling, you lose so many of the benefits of that sort of LDI approach. So it just must be incredible. If you've got 100 clients to do that individually across all 100, you're going to make a mistake, which is going to.
That risk pooling as well is really important, because somebody made the point to me the other day, and I thought it was a really good point, was that where you've got a probability type, sustainable income type approach, the message really is where you're using cash flow to go beyond normal life expectancy. And I think that's in the DB paper as well, a term appropriately beyond normal life expectancy. Where you've got risk pooling, an insurance contract, even if it's DB actually, because you've got a pooled risk there anyway with a membership, or whether it's by an annuity because it's an insurance across a pool of individuals, you haven't got the same situation. You're not necessarily talking about, we've got to manage everybody's pot to age 100, because by definition you've pooled the risk. So with a sustainable withdrawal type approach, you don't know whether your client's going to be one of the ones that lives to 100 or lives to 85. So you have to make the assumption that we're going to have to take not a worst case scenario, it's probably a good scenario if you're going to live to 100, but whereas with a pooled arrangement, then clearly by definition that's already built into the pooling. So I thought that was a really interesting, somebody should do some analysis on that at some point, maybe we should, in terms of what difference that makes to what you have to set aside. Because the interesting thing about the sustainable withdrawal approach is that whilst you've got access to capital, well, if you've set that aside for income, that kind of doesn't become irrelevant. And clearly circumstances change and you can change your mind. But if you've genuinely earmarked that's going to pay for income until such and such age, then the access to capital in some ways, unless circumstances really do change, is not you kind of planned in that was for income. So there's kind of lots of anomalies and things that need ironing out and thinking about, and having that real clear view in terms of what part of the portfolio is being used for what element.
But there's another issue that I've come across in the last 3 cases that I have done for a drawdown, which was last month. All 3 of them over the lifetime allowance, big time over the lifetime allowance. So you've got people who are saving, thinking, we tell them in accumulation they need to put this amount of money away, and then suddenly at the other end of it we're going to whip 55% of it off.
Yeah.
Well, actually, and what I'm finding with the cash flow software is they can't deal with lifetime allowance. So that I find is another issue.
Yeah.
One for the next podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's do that.
Lovely to see everyone. I'll catch you all soon.
Yeah, take care. Bye, Richard. Bye, Martin.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.